Hi. Welcome to Auto Age. I don't know if you have noticed a strange phenomenon in the US. According to media reports, in the US auto market, apart from Tesla, the most popular model is not the familiar Ford or GM, but South Korea's Hyundai Kia. In fact, the popularity of Korean cars in the American market completely overturned my previous perception. In particular, the Hyundai IONIQ 5 pure electric model launched this year has received excellent feedback in the US market, and its sales have risen rapidly in a short period of time, surpassing the Ford Mustang Mach-E and catching up with Tesla. Welcome. The US viewers leave more details to tell us relevant information. According to this trend, it is only a matter of course for Korean car companies to get a share of the US market, but there is always surprise in the development of things. This has to start with the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, IRA, signed by the Biden administration in August this year with a total value of $750 billion. Under the IRA, the U.S. government will provide a $4,000 tax credit to domestic consumers who buy used electric vehicles and a $7,500 tax credit to consumers who buy new electric vehicles. But the premise of enjoying the two subsidies is that the electric vehicle purchased by the consumer must be assembled in North America and purchase more than a certain percentage of battery materials or components from countries that have signed the free trade agreement with the United States. Because the bill only subsidizes vehicles assembled in North America, and also requires that the batteries used in vehicles have a certain percentage of key raw materials produced in North America from next year, the U.S. media believes that the intention of the bill is to exclude China from the supply chain of the U.S. electric vehicle industry. But South Koreans have suddenly found that these U.S. restrictions are also effective for them. After all, Korean electric vehicles have no production line in the United States, and more than 80% of key raw materials such as lithium hydroxide in Korean battery raw materials are imported from China. In the first half of this year, Hyundai Motor had just won the second largest sales volume in the U.S. market, but now with the signing of the new bill, its good days are over. According to a report by the Chosun Ilbo on August 17, after the bill was signed, the U.S. government immediately released a list of electric vehicles eligible for subsidies. On this list, a total of 21 models are eligible for the subsidy, including electric and hybrid vehicles from Ford and U.S. carmakers Rivian and Lucid, some electric and hybrid vehicles produced in North America by Mercedes-Benz, Audi, BMW, Jeep, Volvo, and the only Asian car on the subsidized list, Nissan's Leaf. By the way, a total of 72 models were previously eligible for subsidies in the United States, but 70% of them were removed from the new list. The IONIQ 5, Kona EV, Genesis GV60, EV6 and Niro EV sold in the US by Hyundai Kia Motors Group are included here because they are all manufactured and exported in South Korea. Although Hyundai Group has plans to invest and build a factory in Georgia, the factory is expected to be completed by 2025, and the new factory mainly produces GV70, EV9 and other models, which means major models such as the IONIQ 5 will not be able to enjoy the U.S. government's car purchase subsidies for a considerable period of time. To some extent, the new regulations of the Biden administration have put the brakes on South Korean car companies that are actively exploring the U.S. market. Why? How did Korean cars enter the U.S. market? Of course, it's cost-effectiveness. When asked why they gave the IONIQ 5 a high rating, the professional said, "Compared to expensive electric cars, the IONIQ 5 is attractive to buyers in terms of performance, range and charging speed." But now with the promulgation of the new regulations, American consumers who want to buy a Korean car have to pay for an extra $7,500, which greatly offsets the cost-effective advantage of Korean cars. For example, the IONIQ 5 sells for $40,000 in the US, and Ford has a similarly performing Mustang Mach-E for $44,000. Hyundai had a price advantage before, but now Ford has subsidies, and the actual price is $36,500. Also hit by the new regulations is another major industry in South Korea, power batteries. According to the Inflation Reduction Act, starting from next year, an electric car that can get half of the $7,500 subsidy must have core materials, lithium or nickel, etc., for its power cell from the United States or a country that has signed a free trade agreement, FTA, with the United States. If you want to get the other half, then the main components of the power battery used, cathode and anode materials, etc., from North America must be at least 50%. In addition, China's battery components will be completely banned from 2024, and China's mineral raw materials will be completely banned from 2025. However, South Korean power battery companies are extremely dependent on Chinese raw materials. In the first half of this year, South Korea's import of lithium hydroxide, a key raw material for power batteries from China, increased by 404%. At present, South Korea has 83.2% of its lithium hydroxide imports to rely on China. In fact, there are only two ways for South Korean car companies to go. One is to admit the bad luck and gradually lose the American market. The other is to go to the United States to build a factory for assembly. Although this can get subsidies, it requires further investment in the United States. For South Korea, this is equivalent to cutting off some of the jobs in South Korea. The South Korean government and the auto industry are very angry and embarrassed about this, because it has only been 3 months since the South Korea-US summit and the Harmonious Atmosphere jointly announced the establishment of an economic alliance. As a result, there have been some voices in South Korea calling for greater cooperation with China. South Korea's so-called economic alliance with the United States has given up some interests in the Chinese market. Now, since it is out of favor in the United States, it will expand cooperation with China. South Korea's Korea Jungang Daily published an article by Park Sung-cheon, director of the Korea-China Business Research Institute, on September 3, saying that in the past 4 months, South Korea has continuously experienced trade deficits with China, which means that changes in the trade pattern and structure between China and South Korea are very likely to accelerate in the future. The reasons may be that, first, as China rapidly gets rid of labor-intensive industries, the trade structure between South Korea and China in the form of processing trade in the past is shrinking. Second, as China's mid- and long-term master plan for its localization strategy becomes more mature, it is highly likely that exports of high-value-added industries such as Korean precision equipment, such as computers and fine chemicals, to China will decline further. Third, South Korea's imports of Chinese raw materials, components, and other intermediate products and goods are very likely to increase. Therefore, it is urgent to strengthen China-South Korea supply chain cooperation. Okay, the above is the relevant analysis I made in combination with news reports. As for how Korean car companies will choose in the end and how things will go, we can only wait and see what happens. What is certain is that the trend of world economic integration is unstoppable. Competition and cooperation between countries and enterprises are not shifted by individual will, and the butterfly effect brought about by the intensification of Sino-US frictions also tests the wisdom of all human beings. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.